Welcome. We're so excited to have you all on for our very first Bare Bones Live. I can't believe we have 75 people. That's fantastic. So glad that you're all here. My name is Kip Dooley. I'm one half of the Bare Bones duo with my mom, food author and cookbook author Beth Dooley. Just to give a quick outline of the evening, my mom, Beth, and I will each do a brief reading and give some opening remarks. And then we'll toss it over to our esteemed guests, author Karen Babine and Irish American restaurateur and food entrepreneur Kieran Folliard. They'll each share for about 10 minutes some reflections and perhaps some readings about St. Patrick's Day and the Irish sensibility. And then Karen and Kieran are going to be in conversation for a little while there, responding to one another and sharing some stories and insights about what this day is all about. And that we'll let that run till about 7:10 Central Time, so we can have 20 minutes for open Q&A at the end. We'll wind down about 7:30 Central Time, but I, for one, am happy to linger a bit afterwards, and if anybody wants to chat some more informally. If you have any questions, ideas, reflections during the first half of the evening, please feel free to put them in the chat. I can't guarantee we'll respond to them in real time, but it's great to have your thoughts in the mix. And like I said, we'll have a good 20 minutes at the end for open conversation. We are recording this, and we're going to make it available and put it online in the next few days for anybody who could not attend live. And we'll also be sending a follow-up email with links to Karen's books and all of Kieran's great work with food building and all of his partners there at Food Building. So we'll get started. As many of you know, my mom, Beth, and I started Bare Bones almost 1 year ago when we started cooking together once a week online on Zoom as a way to kind of stay sane and grounded and connected during those early days of the pandemic. So here we are 1 year later. And we started to have some really interesting conversations a year ago about why food is so important, how it's a touchstone for our relationships with one another, with the land, with our ancestry. And we said, hey, why don't we share some of what we're learning with some of our friends and family? And maybe it'll actually get us to turn some of those stray thoughts in our notebooks into real pieces of writing. So I'm going to start this evening by sharing an excerpt from one of those early posts, which I think can kind of ground us in the why behind this endeavor called Bare Bones, and also provide a bit of a segue into some of the themes for our conversation tonight. So I was born in early autumn of a year of great optimism, 1989. Several months after I arrived, the Berlin Wall fell, a symbol of the imminent final stage of history, a globalized liberal democracy. Nationalism was out and peace was in. Communism was dying, apartheid unwinding, and the World Wide Web would take care of the rest. 30 years later, however, we find ourselves reliving some of the nightmares of the 20th century, but in hyperspeed. News of racist police killings, economic collapse, authoritarianism, a pandemic, all with the added specter of environmental destruction, bombards us daily on our handheld screens. The internet promised to liberate humanity by liberating information, but like many revolutionary promises, it couldn't really see its own dark side. Twitter, it turns out, can be a powerful tool for autocrats. Our screen-addled brains seem more anxious than ever. And who needs to take climate action when you can protest virtually or just watch nature documentaries in the tub? 20,000 years into this experiment called civilization, humanity is still earthbound after all, still tragically and comically flawed. What keeps me grounded as I contemplate all this is the daily ritual of cooking. At least once each day, I make a point to shut my computer and try to make something tasty with my hands. Almost all I know I learned not from the internet, but from my mom, a gal from New Jersey with zero formal culinary training. She spent much of her adult life writing recipes for cookbooks, but rarely relies on them. She's always bought and cooked food based on look or feel, or the look or feel of the guy or gal selling it. She is a shameless flirt, and a smart one too. In 10 seconds of farmer's market stall banter, she can spy the fresh crop carrots, the readiness of corn or the ripeness of berries. Is a way for us to delve into what really matters together, as the world seems to be going mad, to reach into the grand old house called humanity and grab onto its frames and its beams, its bones, while the earth around us shakes. In a country so often lost in the endless woods of me, food offers a path back to the home called us, a home large enough to hold it all, our dreams, our faults, our quirks, and our differences. I hope I wasn't muted for all of that. I don't think I was. So throughout this year, my mom and I have been learning about our Celtic ancestry, both from the continent of Europe and from Ireland. And the phrase Irish sensibility can mean so many things. And both Karen and Kieran will speak to it in probably greater sophistication than I can once I shut up here. But I think for both my mom and I, reconnecting with the Irish sensibility has given us some language, some frameworks, some humor, and some ways of being that don't insist on having all of the answers all the time or fixing all of the problems or being the best or being right. To me, Ireland is a place and a people that doesn't hide its contradictions and its paradoxes. And that's a great blessing for this year. So with that, I'll hand it off to you, Mom, and then to Karen and Kieran.
Thank you, Kip. Thanks. One of the things we also do is we're sharing our lineage and digging into where we came from and how we got here is we often share poetry. And I know both Karen and Kieran are, they're wonderful at sharing both their own work and poems. And so in thinking about St. Patrick's Day and how it resonates for all of us, I thought I'd share this one poem called The Lost Land by Evan Boland. I have 2 daughters. They are all I have ever wanted from the earth, or almost all. I also wanted one piece of ground, one city trapped by hills, one urban river, an island in its element, so I could say mine, my own, and mean it. Now they are grown up and far away, and memory itself has become emigrant, wandering in a place where love dissembles itself as landscape, where the hills are the colors of a child's eyes, where my children are distances, horizons. At night, on the edge of sleep, I can see the shore of Dublin Bay, its rocky sweep and its granite pier. Is this, I say, how they must have seen it? Backing out on the mailboat at twilight, shadows falling on everything they had to leave and would love forever. And then I imagine myself at the landward rail of that boat, searching for the last sight of a hand. I see myself on the underworld side of that water, the darkness coming in fast, saying all the names I know for a lost land. And I think in this celebration, I mean, St. Patrick's Day is celebrated all over the world. It's celebrated in Tokyo, in the Caribbean. It's celebrated in the space station. Every place on Earth celebrates this. And I think it's because, in one sense, we're all in between places throughout our lives where our imaginations and our groundedness are constantly in balance, tugging at each other. And I know I'm going to toss it to Karen because she has some wonderful writing about being in that place of searching, looking backward as we look forward. So Karen, I'm going to pass it over to you.
And it helps if I unmute. If you had been doing this long enough, I would remember that. But thank you for the invitation. I'm really glad to be here. And I was thinking this morning about how we imprint flavors on places. Because when it rains, all I want is strong Assam tea. Because that tastes like dark rain in Galway in January, and that's what I want. So it's raining here today, and that's all I wanted. And the decaf that I've been drinking all afternoon is decaf berries, so my soul is very happy. There's other places in the world that taste like things, that taste like memories made in those places. my history in Ireland is less a family thing and more of an intellectual thing. Um, it's really started with a very persuasive Irish lit prof when I was in college. And I was in her office one day and said I was thinking about studying abroad in England. And she looked at me and she's like, "How about Ireland?" I was like, "Okay." Which is how I ended up in Galway for 6 months and never really quite came home all the way. So the very old blind cat who I would like to shut out but can't, his name is Galway. And so there's lots of Irish running in my house on a daily basis. But I think too about the poem that you just read, and the only poem that I have memorized is Yeats's The Stolen Child, which is very place heavy. Um, and it's great. And so when we think about food and we think about place, there's no way to separate those things from the place that they came from. And so um, when I when my mom was going through cancer, it got to the point in the spring when she was about 3 or 4 months in, where I just got really tired of everything. I got tired of everything being hard, and so I'm just going to read a little bit from All the Wild Hungers. Just one paragraph from chapter 42, and then I'll read what I've got on St. Patrick's Day. So it is mid-March, 2 weeks after my mother's birthday, which also marks the midpoint of her chemotherapy regimen, and I'm instituting the first annual Holy Week of the Kitchen. This is the place where I fully ignore the ugly food metaphors of cancer and decide that I will create my own damn metaphors. March 14th is Pi Day, 3.14. March 15th is the Ides of March. March 16th, today, is St. Urho's Day, the feast day of the fictional Finnish saint who drove the grasshoppers from Finland, loudly fated in the small Finn-populated town of Managa, 20 miles from my hometown. I was well into adulthood before I learned that St. Urho was not real. Holy Week concludes with St. Patrick's Day, full of vegetarian colcannon, soda bread, Irish cheese and butter, and other Irish delights. So yesterday was the Ides of March. I made pie on Sunday, which was good fun. So here's what I wrote about St. Patrick's Day. When you spend enough time with a potato, you learn the differences between waxy and starchy by feel and instinct, not trivia. Sometimes the only way to know something is by doing, by experiencing the success and failure of the thing yourself. You learn that it's perfectly logical to have both in the darkness of your pantry closet in containers labeled boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew in bold black letters, so that you grab the Yukons for the potato corn chowder you're making with today's Parmesan broth because you like the way that your niece's face lights up when you tell her that you're making her favorite soup. You want them to hold, firm. You're not sure where this deep love of potatoes came from, the Hasselbacks, the gnocchi, the potatoes gleaned from the farms around your hometown in the fall to be made into lefse for the holidays. Russets baked in the microwave make an excellent meal when you just can't manage anything more. Multicolored fingerlings are fun, roasted with sweet Walla Walla onions. You spend enough time in Ireland and in Irish literature to know the history and the delicacy of this Peruvian export, how this efficient plant came to feed millions, only to be felled by a fungus exacerbated by Ireland's monoculture and climate shifts caused by the Little Ice Age. You've read Michael Pollan and others. You know that a potato monoculture in this country runs the same risk, even as you know that your hometown soil is perfect for potatoes, the potato plant in Park Rapids smelling of French fries destined for McDonald's, the food of our home also intended for someone else. Far from being boring, this simple food taken for granted in its simplicity holds endless complication. You peel 6 medium russets on this St. Patrick's Day, the final day of the Holy Week of the Kitchen, 2 for each of you, and set them to parboil for 5 minutes, then set them to cool for 5 minutes on the counter, the steam turning the air opaque as the outer layer of the potato dries out just a bit. You want the starchy potatoes, not the waxy. Meanwhile, your mustard-colored enameled Descoware casserole named Padraig heats with a 375-degree oven. Mix the potatoes with olive oil, salt, and pepper to coat, then add to the hot cast iron. It sizzles in a way that is deeply satisfying, and you shake the pan to distribute evenly. Smoked garlic powder is magical here, but you've learned that it burns, so you'll sprinkle it on at the end. You set the timer for 20 minutes, then come back to turn the potatoes, to shake the pan to cover them in oil so that they brown nicely, and then back in for 3 more cycles of 20 minutes. The result is perfect roasties that are golden, crispy on the outside, fluffy, and perfect on the inside. You could make a meal out of this, you think, as you tuck in, thinking also about the rare strength your mother has to sit at the table tonight. She has not been to the table in days. But this potato has a dark, deadly history, a Peruvian uprooting, the death of millions of people in a kind of culinary genocide as 1 million Irish starved and another million immigrated. Even though there was still enough food in Ireland to feed the population, the British hoped that the Great Hunger would finally finish off the pesky Irish they'd been trying to get rid of for hundreds of years. There's the dark greed of American agribusiness, the moment when agriculture became agribusiness, as Poe Gukro once wrote. There is darkness here, even as we approach the equinox and the return of light. In a few months, when your mother's chemotherapy has ended, you'll quarter red new potatoes, boil them, toss them with crispy steamed green beans, and mix with a balsamic Dijon lemon concoction so good that you and your sisters will stand in the kitchen eating out of the bowl with your fingers. So I think that's where I'll leave it for now and toss it to Kieran, because I'm very, very curious what he has to say.
Thank you so much, Karen. And I know Kieran has a few reflections on potatoes himself.
Actually, what I'd really prefer to do right now after Karen's reading is to go off and think about it. Could you hold on there half an hour? I'll be right back.
Right back. Yep.
No, really. Oh, that was super moving. Yeah, that was. Yeah, I wish you had read that to me, Karen, last week or whatever day that we chatted. Was that
It was yesterday. It was yesterday.
That was yesterday, was it? Okay, that's my life. Yeah, I wish I would have had other reflections. You know, I grew up in a farm community in the west of Ireland, and in fact, the field I worked in as a kid, all growing up, which my father was 39. My mother was 39, and my father was 42 when they married. When they had me, they were 43 and 46. And I found out many, many years later that in adulthood, and they were actually had passed away, that they were second cousins. And so my kids say, is it any wonder I ended up the way that I am? And I still reflect back on my father, who was an unbelievable gardener. I mean, we grew everything that we ate, we grew ourselves. And I still own that field today. And I jokingly talk about if it all goes to hell in a handbasket here in America, I'm going to go back home, get an old caravan or an old tent, and I'm going to park it on that piece of land, and I'm just going to fade away. I'm very connected to the home village of Ballyhaunis that I grew up in. I am still connected both well, emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually with three friends that I grew up with, two guys and a woman. And I've often reflected and thought about where I grew up and place, and why is it such an incredible place? Why am I so passionate about it and so forth? And I realized later on in life that it was a great place because we loved it, you know, and still love it. So it was really about how we felt about it. And the garden, it was, well, this particular field is about 3/4 of an acre. And my father, it was perfect. It was like a mosaic. It was like a painting. It was extraordinary. We grew everything that you can possibly imagine that would grow in Ireland that you could eat. Everything from the beautiful, sweet strawberries all the way to the cabbages and the potatoes and the root vegetables and the scallions and the potatoes. And I still remember my sister, God rest her, unfortunately, she passed away 4 years ago. She was a librarian. She was 3 weeks from retiring, and she passed away from ovarian cancer. And I still remember the two of us running home from school because we had dinner in the middle of the day. And when the new potatoes were dug out of the ground, for 1 week, all we would eat was a bowl of new potatoes, butter, salt and pepper, and that was it, and a glass of milk. And it was it was so moving. So the for me to reflect back on it, and I'm so connected back to that town, and I have taken it with me on my entire journey from working construction sites in London and Manchester as a young person, when I was in college and prior to I actually left home when I was 16. I told my parents I'm going to go work on a construction site in Manchester. And they said, oh, fine, grand. Because I think, they were that age at that point, and I don't know that they had a great sense of the danger and so forth. I would never have done that with my own kids. And I ended up, and I got the train to Dublin, and I took the wrong boat to England. I took the one to Liverpool that was 10 hours instead of the one to Holyhead in North Wales that was 3 hours. And I figured it out. And that was part of the journey from there to the Middle East, and then on to Minnesota. And I worked in Saudi Arabia for launching a dairy products brand 1977, 78, 79 with two farmers from Northern Ireland, Alistair and Paddy McGuckie, and incredible characters who are now happily retired back in Ireland in their 80s. And they launched what has become now one of the most successful indigenous brands in the entire Persian Gulf. Al Marai is the brand. And ended up here in Minnesota. And my standard joke was I came here for a year, but instead of being lost and wandering around in the desert, it's much better to be lost and wandering around in the tundra, flogging whiskey and Irish pubs and food to the Yanks than milk to the Arabs. And so the sense of place, the sense of your heritage, the sense of your journey in life is a very, very strong thread in everything that I've done so far. And so Beth, you've been a great supporter of everything that we've done, whether it was the pubs and food building. And so food building is a journey that really is kind of like taking me back to the very beginning. It's working with small farms, not small farmers now. Some of the farmers are very big, small farms. I did say one time that somebody pointed out, I said, oh yeah, we work with small farmers. They said, how small are they? I said, no, small farms, big farmers. And what we're doing at Food Building with my partner, Mike Phillips at Red Table Meats, working with hog farmers where the hogs are hormone-free, antibiotic-free, fed barley with Bakersfield Flour and Bread, and our great, fantastic team that we've got in there, where we're working with some incredible farmers, people like Luke Peterson, who is like the poster farmer for me, nationally even, in terms of the work that he's doing in the regenerative and sustainable world. And then on the Sawsell family farm for our milk, which is one of 4 farms in Minnesota that supplies milk that is organic and grass-fed year-round. So that's Alamar Cheese, Bakersfield Flour and Bread, and then Red Table Meats. And there are people that are super passionate about what they do. That they've got their sense of place for certain. They have a value system around what I would say. It starts with them personally and their family, and then it goes out to the community, and it's like this extraordinary sense of building goodwill So, what is goodwill? I mean, goodwill, certainly for me, and what my mother taught me was about giving the benefit of the doubt to every single person and every organization and every community. I mean, I grew up in a community that was dominated by the church and by government. And the vice grip that they had that didn't allow you to be who you were. Now, that has changed. And it's not anti-government or anti-Catholicism and so forth, but it is a freeing up of those things to come to something that is, well, maybe more, I'd say, spiritual as it relates to it. But when I look at the extraordinary work that the people that we do, the bank of goodwill that they are building out in the community, and how they give the benefit of the doubt to everybody that they work with until that certain point when, somebody, they go a different route, but it's so heartfelt and it's so, it's so authentic and genuine and it's believable. It doesn't mean people don't make mistakes. No question about that. We all make mistakes and so forth, but come by, but that thing back to, and that to me is connecting this dot at this moment in time and going all the way back to the very beginning of oneself, but also even beyond and your ancestors, and keep going and going and going. And I think that's why, even, the great work, Beth, that you and Kip and people like you are doing to connect people in these ways. And that it isn't really about, sure, everything is commercial to some degree of business. It has to make a profit to stay in business and so forth. Like at food building, all of the makers, we pay minimum of twice, in most cases, 3 to 4 times the commodity price to the farmers we work with, because they cannot stay in business on a commodity price. And so these are, again, the goodwill and the sense of there is value here, there's flavor, there's nutritional value, but it is a sense of community. So, these gatherings on such occasions around something like St. Patrick's Day, for argument's sake, St. Patrick's Day and hospitality, when you think of it, all of the years where people would say to me, oh my God, the Irish, oh God, the look of the Irish. The look of the Irish, you say, what the hell are you talking about? I mean, 300 years of the Vikings, 800 years of the Brits, and they still haven't bloody well left, I mean, famines and civil wars and all of that. The look of the Irish, my arse. And so, I would say it's it really is a sense of that the public house, the egalitarian, the gathering spot. As long as you know who you are, then you know what? We're all good. Everybody can gather together. You come into a place, torn jeans, dreadlocks, whatever, an Armani suit, doesn't matter, Happy, everybody. We're just gathering, we're talking, we're communicating, we're connecting with each other. No pedestals. That's been actually a value of mine from a long, long time ago. No pedestals. Everybody's the same. We're all on a kind of a journey. And I think that is the journey of place, that because you take the place with you. I mean, in my case, I take the place with me. I take all of the memories, all the experiences that I've had, the people that I knew, the people that I'm still connected with. It is, honestly, I talked to a friend of mine, Tommy Grogan, at the weekend, who I grew up with on Sunday, and so emotional. I have communications with Helena Caulfield, who is a credible artist, and we grew up together, and she lives back in, believe it or not, a place called Eden, E-D-E-N, Eden, just outside the village of Ballyhonus. And the emails she writes to me are extraordinary. I mean, the passion and the sense of place that comes out of it. And so, you get to experience that here as well. And so it's, even with all of the turmoil, not just COVID and obviously the Black Lives Matter and all of that. I mean, they're all they're all very relevant because they're very real, and we all have a place to play in them, and how you engage and how you connect back to, in my case, I feel like how I connect back to where I grew up and what are the things that you connect with, experience, and you bring to that discussion, whether it's just with yourself or with people that you're with. And so, yeah, happy to be here with everybody on St. Patrick's Eve.
St. Patrick's Eve. Thanks so much, Kieran. So I'll toss it back to Karen for a little bit. What was coming to mind as you were listening to Kieran talk there and tell stories? I know you've spent some time in Ireland and have thought a lot about your own ancestry and connections across space and time. You do have to unmute.
I did it again. Honestly, it's like I haven't been on Zoom since 9 o'clock this morning. One of the things I was thinking about is how our concept of community and gathering has to change. Whether it's circumstances or it's distance or it's what we can put on a table or what we can't. I mean, I remember the difference between my study abroad in 2000 and going back in 2005 was the difference between smoking everywhere. And when I went back in 2005, the smoking ban was in place. And that made the pubs an entirely different experience. To the point now where we think about imprinting on places. Now I smell cigarette smoke anywhere and I'm walking down Shop Street. It can be a little bit disorienting sometimes. But I think about how we are together and how part of Irish hospitality and Irish culture around food is almost accidental in its planning, but not exactly. And so the pandemic has changed how we've been together and how we move culture and we move food into different spheres. But I think that sometimes when I think about the role that time plays, whether it's 300 years of the Vikings and 800 years of the British, things don't stay the same. Even when the table might look the same as it did a year ago. And so I was also thinking too about when I first went there, I ate meat. I became vegetarian in 2011 with the dispensation to myself that I could have bacon in Ireland. And so I've been back 3 times since then. I used my dispensation once and haven't since, but it's a whole lot easier to be vegetarian in Ireland now than it used to be. And so I can go to Griffin's Bakery in Galway and have the most glorious vegetarian Irish breakfast and then walk out with the best bread in the world. Although I do miss like chicken sandwiches with coleslaw, which the discovery of coleslaw on sandwiches still remains one of the greatest light bulbs of my life on a food level. And I do miss those sandwiches. But yeah, I was thinking about time.
I want to thank you, Karen, because I want to, a lot of the things you raise are sort of, I'm sure, Karen, you're grappling with them right now. The things are beginning to open up, and as a place where people, Karen's Kitchen is a great place to hang out. We often find before the pandemic, our family often sort of found ourselves there because it was just so easy to be there, and you solved a lot of issues for people that don't want to cook every night by offering this wonderful takeout that's so easy. Both by having a deli, so if you haven't decided what you want, you can still go in and grab it or order ahead. And I imagine that helped keep people engaged with Karen's Kitchen and your makers, but can you sort of talk about how that's changed your thinking about hospitality and how you see things opening up?
Well, for us personally, I mean, honestly, my standard joke is when I started, bought the building and the area around food building in 2013, I guess. My standard joke is I should have gone fishing. Seriously, it's woeful. So it is. It's very, very difficult. Artisan food production. There's a reason why it is not so prevalent in the market, is because it's difficult. And so it is, because food is so bad, food is so cheap in this country. And it's becoming quite cheap in Europe as well. And so I look at it now. I didn't have a fishing rod, or maybe I would have gone fishing at the time. And so now we're lashed to the mast. We're in the middle of the ocean. The storms are raging, and we're looking for dry land. And no chance of treasure. Yeah, that one, forget that one. But that was never the point anyway, for sure. It was always really about, food building was about giving voice to super talented people who did not have the opportunity to express their talent and were boxed into a situation where they really had to play the market. And so I can tell you, I mean, Red Table Meats, Bakersfield, I'll speak to those two. Last year, after 6 years, broke even. So they needed money every year going forward. And it's still very, very difficult to break through. We'll look at the situation. We're not going to go back as a restaurant. So we're going to stay as a cafe deli with outdoor dining and events, because the goal is get people to the building, have them come in, have them have a great experience. They can look into the stone mills. We have two of them now. We had one, we have two, where the first stone mills in Minneapolis in 100 years. And, if you use flour to bake bread or bake whatever you do with it, there's no comparison between commercial flour and stone mill flour. There just isn't. I mean, period. And not just me talking. I mean, the experts are out there talking. So our businesses are timeless. People were dry curing meats in caves thousands of years ago. They were stone milling grain thousands of years ago. They were naturally leavening breads thousands of years ago. They were churning milk to make cheese thousands of years ago. So it's timeless. Fermentation is the theme around it. And it really is about flavor and nutrient value. To just have nutrient value isn't going to work, unfortunately, nowadays, and so forth. But so you have to have the flavor as well. So you need little bits of our food. You don't need this much of it. And so when we look at it and think about, well, where is it all going? So what we're looking at, the types of products we have are very popular in Europe, Spain, Italy, France, Ireland nowadays, for sure. Not when I was growing up, but nowadays, for sure. But here in this country, to a large degree, it's really considered, they're kind of like gift items. They're for parties and so forth. They're not for your everyday. So now I was talking with the celebrated chef, Tim McKee, that hopefully everybody is familiar with. I mean, he's our James Beard Award winning and just all around, just an incredible individual. And his passion for food, his technical knowledge, etc., his understanding of it is fantastic. So I was talking to him a couple of months ago, and I said, Tim, we need to break through and not have our products be considered gift items or whatever for a party. And I said, would you just create one food item, a meal, a recipe from the products in the building? And he came back to me the next day and he said, you know what? Instead of just one old white guy to another, that'll be the two of us. He said, how about if we really engage the chef community here and got them to produce them, and we'll get one a month. So he wrote to 19 chefs. Everybody, from Jamie Malone to Ann Kim to Stephen Brown, Alex Roberts, and 19 of them all said yes. Now that was, I mean, honestly, that was the most, I mean, it just blew my, I mean, I was so emotional about it, that there was this incredible support, not just for the makers, but for the farmers and for the overall community and how it ties together. So just this month, we launched with Yivang, a meal kit. Yivang, I mean, what a great character. I mean, this Hmong heritage, and he brings this meal where he takes Bakersfield and he takes Red Table and he takes Alamar cheese and he creates this incredible meal, and it was fantastic. I ate it twice. It was super spicy, but I ate it all. I actually I was licking the plate, so I was with it, but it was spicy, and I like spicy food. Tim himself is launching tomorrow at Food Building, Kieran's Kitchen at Food Building, a cast iron pizza. So the dough, of course, comes from Bakersfield. The sauce is from Kieran's Kitchen. We've got Alamar cheese, the mozzarella in there, and we've got Red Table Bulldog. And then people can take whatever they have in the fridge and throw it on top of it as well, right? And put it in the thing. And it's super easy. But that idea of how a community comes together, the goodwill of it, the mutual supportiveness, the win-win of it. I mean, that to me, it's probably been the most eye-opening and the most satisfying piece, because this is, you think about all of the people that are involved in this, there is probably, no, I don't know, 20, 30 different nationalities from around the world, and they're right here in Minnesota, and they're all coming together to bring their influences, their ideas, and their support to products that are made here. And, you know, and that we're terribly grateful, but that's the win-win. And that's been one of our values from day one, was always win-win. If somebody is losing, bad idea, win-win. I'll shut up. I'm Irish. I can keep talking for bloody ever.
It's fantastic.
Aaron, please don't ever stop talking.
We can be here all night.
I saw Susie Hopper's name pop up there, and I'm sure Susie is there, and she's scratching it. That Egypt, he's Jesus Christ. Where are you, Susie?
Oh,
Well, I think
you mentioned any cast iron, and my little feelers go up. So you know.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Well, this is a perfect timing to open it up for Q&A. Folks, if you want to ask a question or share a reflection, please feel free to raise your hand or just unmute yourself and chime in.
Oh, you can tell we're in Minnesota. Everybody will have something to say as soon as we log off, right?
Go ahead, Dave.
I'm from Wisconsin, so I could just pipe up, right?
There you go, Janet.
Yeah.
Hi.
Go for it, Janet.
Hi.
Janet's on Madeline Island, by the way.
I am. I just came in from the sugar bush where I hauled 55 gallons of sap. I've got 60 on the porch. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. As a newbie here, but I just wanted to ask you experts, and I've done the classic corned beef, cabbage, potatoes, carrots, and I ran across this crazy recipe, and I make pasties. It's like my passion, right? Beth knows this. She's tasted the pastry.
Yeah.
I want to put the corned beef, cabbage, carrots, all that in a pasty. Has anybody done that? Because I'm kind of scared. Usually I put the raw meat chopped up with the venison, and now there's this whole boiled corned beef thing, but I don't want things to get in the pasty. Has anybody tried it? Or is that just sacrilege?
Haven't, but that sounds amazing.
Does it?
I mean,
I haven't done it, but I'm going to do it.
Are you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, I saw it on Facebook and it looked great on Facebook. So that must mean it's going to be good.
There's only one way to find out.
It sounds perfect. I mean, it sounds like a meat pie, right?
Right. So
That's
the thing
perfect.
I'm kind of wondering about is, would you kind of I usually kind of slow cook the corned beef brisket when I do. Would you do that first, or do you
Oh,
think
yeah.
you'd think you'd do that first?
Cook the corned beef first and then put it in the pasty. So you're making the pasty with the cooked corned beef. Don't cook the corned beef in the pasty. It'll take forever. That's not a good idea.
That's what this is why I'm asking you guys, which also means I can sit there and chomp on the corned beef and cabbage while I'm making the
That's
pasty.
right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
When you live alone 10 miles up the island and you only have your cat to ask questions to, it's very helpful. Thank you much, support group.
Well, hey, once you do it, Janet, shoot us a note, and if you have a recipe, we can feature it in the newsletter. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah,
God,
for sure. For
I
sure.
would be honored.
I love it.
Very honored. Thank you much.
Awesome.
And if you use Bakersfield flour and bread for your pastry, then it'll really be fantastic.
I'm bringing you, next time I come up to the island, I'll bring you some. And Karen, you have some now too, right?
Yes, because you were a goddess who sent me a gift package.
But have you worked with it? Have you
Not yet. Not yet.
Yeah, I know Diane has. I see my sister-in-law, Diane. You've used it, right? Yeah, hi. Yeah.
So what's fantastic about this flour? Tell me about it.
Oh my God.
It's organic grade from Minnesota, and then it's stone milled. And the stone milling is really the key.
It's not only stone milled, it's fresh. And flour is like any food, the fresher, the better you're going to taste it. It tastes like something. Most flour that you buy in 5-pound sacks that is bleached and white, and it doesn't have a flavor. It's a carrier. Whereas Bakersfield actually tastes like wheat. You can taste the wheat in it. And because Bakersfield identifies the different varieties of wheat on the bags, you can actually taste the difference in the different wheats that are milled. And they're wonderful about also milling different types of flour. Some wheats are better for pastries. They're a softer flour, and they make a better, more tender pastries. And other wheats have a higher gluten content, and those wheats are better for bread. So you can actually match the kind of wheat that's been milled to what you intend to make, and it makes a huge difference, believe me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's great.
I don't know if they have that down at Rick and Lori's store, so I might have to take the ferry over there and spend $43.
Yeah, no, I'll bring some up to you. Honey. No
All
worries.
right, thank you, Beth.
Yeah.
Oh,
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Di, that's great. Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
That would look great on my show.
Yeah.
There it is.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Jim, did you have a question? I saw you unmuted.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to ask, by the way, hi, Karen and Kieran, two of my good friends.
Jim!
Yeah, hi,
How are you
Jim.
doing?
So, I'm not sure there's a question or how to phrase it, but how do you balance between being daring with your food, trying new things, trying things you never did before, opening yourself up to a whole new world of food, and the things you love, the way mom used to make it, all of that, the things, the familiar. So how do you, and Karen, you had to do that, like you're a vegetarian cooking for your mom who was dying. How do you juggle that two different demands on your food, on your palate?
Well, I think that it's a double-pronged question, because it was really easy to cook the way that my mother always had, except that I couldn't taste it. And so it made gravy a little difficult. But I had a decent sense of seasoning, even without tasting it. But I will say that, often I would, take gravy or something in to my dad to test it, like mostly to test salt content. And the best compliment that he would give was like, your grandmother would be proud of this gravy. I was like, okay, we're done here. Okay, good to know. But because I wouldn't eat any of it, it required thinking outside the box to either try to get the sense of the thing or to create something new. And so one of the things that I actually wrote about in here was that for her birthday, I made Julia Child's beef bourguignon with meat from Hackenmüller's in Robbinsdale, which was super fun because I'd never made it like from Julia Child's recipe before, but obviously that wasn't anything that my sisters or I could eat. And so Smitten Kitchen's got a recipe for mushroom bourguignon, which is fantastic.
I did it for Christmas this year. It's amazing.
It's so good. And so when I stopped trying to find substitutes for meat, and things got a little easier, because
Yeah.
I mean, fake meat is fake meat. And why not take inspiration from all of the other magnificent foods that exist that can do the same sort of flavor profiles? And so, you know, I keep trying to make hot water crust pastry, which I've made successfully twice. The first time I did it, it was perfect. I have no idea what I did because I've not been able to recreate it. But most recipes call for lard.
Yeah.
And so obviously I'm going to try to substitute butter and shortening and see if that works. But, you know, there's always a little like, how can we make the thing work when food and cooking is so much chemistry and it's so delicate in its composition? I set off the smoke alarm half the time. So my kitchen is, there's a reason I live alone. So what goes in the garbage? Nobody knows that but me. So
I'm sure it's wonderful. So we're going like that whole question about reaching out though, Kieran. I mean, 40 years ago, Ireland had dismal food, awful food. It was, you know, and you've done remarkable things. How do you do it?
The advice, going back to your first question there, Jim, my advice to you would be that, right, there are 7 days in the week. There are anything between 21 and 28 meal periods. You can at least throw 3 of those in there to experiment and try different things. Now that you're retired, for God's sake, you got enough bloody time on your hands. Figure it out.
Yeah.
But the food was abysmal in Ireland, for sure. And I think the, you know, there are individuals like Myrtle Allen with Ballymaloo and so forth, and a lot of the artists and cheesemakers in particular, etc. But the explosion in the artisan food world in Ireland is just, it just blows my mind away. It's incredible. It's like, I read all these things. I subscribe to the Irish Times, and the Irish Times has a monthly food club deal. And I read that every month and I think, oh my God, I'm going to move back there. Now I'm not going to, because I have grandkids here and whatnot and all of that good stuff. But I think I'm going to go back, because I would say food-wise, it might possibly be, when you get back to the history and the origins of what food was like. When I talked about timelessness earlier on, and what people were doing with stone milling and so forth, and all of that those good things. I mean, that's exactly what it's gone back to in Ireland, and the quality, the flavor, the nutrient value, the experimentation, the interest in it, and just the experience. I mean, it's extraordinary. I mean, it's
when you eat, you participate in history. It's great.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah. Thanks, you guys.
Love that. Thanks, Jim. Well, we just have a few minutes left. Kieran, could you speak a little bit to what you think has led to that explosion of artisan food in Ireland and this kind of culinary renaissance?
Education.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was 1962, Ireland got free education. And that was in the equivalent of high school here. Secondary school is called in Ireland, and third level college. And so there was a decision made that people needed an education or access to education. And as a result of education, it opened up people's minds. And then people got the freedom and the opportunity and the freedom to follow what I talked about at the beginning in terms of their individual passions and so forth. And now it wasn't just a funnel that you all were led into. You're going to either work the land at home in Ireland or you're going to immigrate. And the massive immigration, even in the 50s and 60s, and even in the 80s, actually, when I left Ireland, I mean, the economy was in a horrendous state. So it was. And that eventually, that education and the numbers, the high percentage, I mean, it's in the 90 percentile of people from high school that go to university and get the education. And I've had the great pleasure of working with probably about 30 individuals that are young people from Ireland that have come to work here in America over the last couple of years. And the education they've gotten, the smarts and the worldliness of them, it blows me away. I think about myself and the friends I grew up with, and I think, oh my God, we were the dunces. We were sitting in the corner with a little hat on and told to stay there. I mean, really, and it's extraordinary. Now, I also tell them, though, they need to figure out how to maybe work a little bit harder as well. It's not all just smart, it's a little bit of that. But I think that education and that it opened up opportunities, and people said, oh, I can follow my passion, I can follow my dream. And because there were incredible chefs that came out of Ireland in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, but they all went abroad. They went to London, they went to Paris, they went to Rome, to Denmark, Sweden, wherever, and they stayed there. And you know, interestingly enough, you two were the first superstars that stayed in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
All previous people, artists, actors, you name it, left and stayed away. They stayed in Ireland, and that gave incredible encouragement, I think, to a lot of people as well. You can remain in place and still follow your passion and your dreams.
Do you think, Kieran, do you think that the Celtic Tiger also played a role in providing an environment for those chefs to thrive because the economy was doing well enough that people could invest and also buy it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, no question about it. That happened, but the great testimony has been when the Celtic Tiger became the Celtic Pussycat because it fell apart. That still remained. The people were still able to figure out how to, again, follow their passions and be true to who they were. And the level of authenticity around it was, because if you know anything about Irish people, they'll never give you a break. So they won't. I mean, none of us, you know, it's like the old saying was, oh, Jesus, they'll be the first people to help you to get to the top of the wall, and then they'll be the first people to pull you down before you got over it. It's okay. That's another discussion. So it is for sure. But the fact that it continued and has thrived to this day is a testimony, I think, to you know, the individual.
Yeah. Well, we're just about at time here, folks. I'm happy to leave the Zoom open if anyone wants to stick around and chat. If Karen and Kieran are willing, that would be great as well. Karen just popped the link to the passage she read today about potatoes in the chat, and we'll be sharing out more links in our follow-up email along with the recording. Karen, Kieran, thank you so much for being with us. Thanks for your stories. Thanks for your heart. Thanks for all the great work you're doing in the world. Thanks to everyone who joined, and thank you, Mom, for doing this. We did it.
Thank you, Mom.
You're on mute. You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. It's such a gift to have you here. So be well.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Be well, Sláinte.
Yeah, thank you, Sláinte. Yeah, bye.
So you're going to stay